Hey, it's Jessie from Squeegee Ink, and welcome back to Printer's Corner. This is where I answer the questions that you've given me throughout the week using hashtag Printer's Corner in our comments and in DMs, and I answer them in a little bit more detail. This week's questions are all about a little bit about full color process and using as few screens as possible on a print run. There's also one about a specific printing issue where they've got blurring on one side and can't print the other. Then I've got a question about lining up prints and keeping a print run consistent. Don't forget to watch the whole episode so that you see the results from this week's community poll. The community poll is basically where I ask a multiple choice question in the community and we all see what other people are doing. It's just a way to be nosy. You can answer the community poll on the community tab on our Squeegee Ink YouTube video, and you can answer old ones, you can write in comments, and we can just have a little bit of a discussion. Our first question is from Chuck Potatoes 8045, and the question is, can't you do 4-color process to eliminate the amount of colors in screens? This is a question underneath a video where we were demonstrating how to print a 9-color design onto paper using just pre-exposed screens and hinge clamps. So technically, yes, if our intention was to use as few screens as possible, then 4-color process, which prints cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, just using 4 screens, would be the choice. However, we weren't trying to use as few screens as possible because we were actually trying to show how to do something quite complex using very simple techniques and methods and equipment. And also, I don't actually like the way CMYK comes out in a design, especially if it's a vector-based design and it's supposed to be bold and vibrant and be a poster that you put on the wall. We're not trying to recreate a photograph, for example. So we wanted flat areas of color, which you wouldn't do with CMYK printing, which is all to do with dots going next to each other and appearing like different colors. So yes, technically you're right if you wanted to eliminate them, but we didn't in this particular circumstance. Definitely check out that video though, because it shows that you can do difficult things with simple equipment. It also shows you how to do a home setup and what using pre-exposed screens can actually create. So I think it's quite a good course on YouTube. Our second question is from Windy Ben, and they have asked, hashtag Printer's Corner. The bottom half of my print is not coming out and the top half is blurring. I'm using self-leveling ink and a good squeegee and screen. What would the likely issue be, please? If we're trying to troubleshoot this, the ink that they're using is probably the self-leveling from Magnacolors, so that's probably not the issue. Their screen size is apparently good, so you've got lots of room around your image, and they're using a good squeegee, which hopefully means they're using a professional grade squeegee. So the other likely issue would be that their off contact is all wonky and not even, because what they're saying is they're blurring half of the screen and then the other half isn't even coming out when they're printing it, which might indicate that this side of the screen, the bottom half, is not coming out. So there's just too much distance there from the bottom of the screen to the t-shirt, so they're not physically able to force the ink onto the garment. And then on the other end, it's probably hitting up against the platen and the t-shirt, and then it's just like smudging and it's blurring and it's just a mess. So I would definitely have a look, just clean up the screen, put the screen on and make sure that it's not hitting the platen, but it's just kind of hovering evenly, probably the width of a pound coin the whole way across. If that doesn't solve it, then come back to us, ask another question. But I'm fairly sure your off contact is the issue in this particular case. Our final question is from Sasa77, and they said, hashtag Printer's Corner. Sometimes I can take ages lining up my prints for multicolour designs. Print one and it is off on one colour, then on the actual print run it is all fine again. what could cause the print to not consistently line up? If you're printing one and in one case it's lining up, that probably eliminates the problem of your screens not being registered, and it's probably a factor somewhere else. I had this recently as well, where I did a test print, and on one of the colours it was a little bit off, and I was really, really tempted to just nudge the screen or change the micro registration on that one colour to get it bang on. But thankfully, Em came over and looked at it as well and noticed that it's probably not the registration or us lining up the screens or printing weirdly. But she noticed that it was probably the adhesive on the platen not holding the garment evenly all the way around. So then one bit had kind of come off the platen and moved as I was printing it, making it look like I hadn't registered. So thankfully I didn't tweak anything. We just freshened up the adhesive on the platen and went again. So you do really have to go through all of the different variables. You have to check your off contact, your platen adhesive, that everything's tight. So that's probably what I would guess would be a factor in changing this person's registration from one shirt to the next, is probably the adhesive and how your shirt's being held. To round up this week's question, which is how to keep your screen print run consistent, it is really, really helpful to have a bit of a checklist to make sure that you're hitting all these points before you go ahead with the full print run. So, for example, make sure the screen tension on all your screens is similar if you're doing multicolored jobs especially, and make sure that your platen placement is correct. So the same distance away from the center of the press and the same location on each of your platens. Make sure all your adhesive is fresh and you've cleaned off all the lint and it's sticky all the way around and even. You also need to check your off contact on all your screens, just in case you've changed one during the week. And you have to do that on every screen and platen, not just assume that one of them's okay, so they're all going to be okay. You have to make sure all the knobs are tightened on your screen to hold your screen in place, but also your platen. And you have to make sure that your heat on your flash dryer and your conveyor dryer is at the optimum temperature, and that all your platens are a nice warm temperature before you start printing, so they're not just warming up as you get going into your print run. Have a little checklist and make sure you hit all those, even if you're an experienced printer, to make sure that your print run is consistent as possible. I hope I've answered all of your questions. It's now time for this week's community poll.
Community poll.
This week's poll question was, what do you prefer printing? So I meant like techniques. So I said one option was simulated process, one option was flat colours, and the third option was CMYK. And well over 80% of the votes at this point are for flat colours. So by that we mean like vectors and not all the sim process. But hopefully you're not steering away from sim process because it's tricky, because there's loads of really good software out there. In particular, I like to use Sep Studio NXT because it makes separating really complicated artwork really simple. And I have a couple of videos on that, and I'll leave the link in the description below. You can also use the CRP5 discount code for Separation Studio and AccuRIP and all of those kind of softwares and things that are on solutions for screen printers. So don't shy away from sim process, but I also understand why you enjoy doing the flat colours. I hope you have a great week, and don't forget to give us more questions using hashtag Printers Corner. Get involved on our community tab on the YouTube channel and vote in all the polls, answer the questions and see what all the other printers are doing. I hope you have a great week printing and catch us on the next episode.